Hello, friends, and welcome to episode number 76 of Nostalgia Talk. Wow, 76. It's funny, I was at my friend's wedding not too long ago, and she said to me, I'm so proud of everything you've accomplished with your podcast. And I was like, oh,
Yeah,
I just did episode number 70 at the time, 70. And she's like, when you get to
yes,
episode number 100, we'll have to come back here and do a big party. And I'm like, whoa, okay, well, that's quite
of
the
course,
event for the 100th
of
episode of a
course,
podcast.
of
So
course.
anyway,
I would have wished. Imagine if it would have been episode 77 after what we just said about the number seven. That would
oh,
have been, because
thank you.
seven is God's number.
Mhm.
So yeah, then you would have two sevens. But anyway, 76 is a good number too.
Thank you.
Yes.
So, welcome to episode number 76 of Nostalgia Talk. I'm James, and this time around, I am being joined by the one and only Phillip Wilcher. Welcome.
The one and only. I hope. I hope there's not another one of me out there. Um, yeah. No, James. Thank you for inviting me on. I've known you for many years now, and it's a real pleasure to be here and chat with you.
Well, thank you for coming. Now, for
What are
anybody
we
who
going to talk about? Oh, okay. Sorry.
So for so let me just introduce you for anybody who doesn't know. Philip is a musician and composer who is commonly known in the media as the Fifth Wiggle. That's not a joke.
Mm.
Not many people realize, but when the Wiggles first started, this was like going 30 years ago. Like I grew up with the Wiggles. Who amongst us hasn't watched the Wiggles at one point when we were kids, whether it's old OG Wiggles, Sam Wiggles, Emma Wiggles, or the
Yeah,
current Wiggles? We've
yeah.
all watched it at one point, but not everybody realizes that when the Wiggles first started back in 1991, there were 5 Wiggles. We all know,
You,
if you're my age anyway, we all know Greg, Anthony, Murray, and Jeff, but not many people know Philip. Philip was a
yeah,
Wiggle during album number 1 back in 1991. And in his
that's right.
time during that group, just on that album alone, he did piano and glockenspiel and keyboards, like simulated sound keyboards,
That's
and
right.
also sang on the album and did some songs for it, songwriting, uh,
That's right.
and has done a lot of compositions in his own right. So, Philip, welcome to Nostalgia Talk.
Thank you for inviting me, James. As I said earlier, I've known you for many years now. You grew up with the Wiggles. I grew up. I grew up. No, yeah, no, that's very true what you said, and it's lovely to be here and chat with you.
Mm-hmm. And
Thank
it's
you for
interesting
inviting me.
thinking about the past of there being 5 Wiggles because now there's 8 Wiggles.
I believe so. That's a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, two
Yeah,
for each
yeah.
color. Yeah.
Yes, yeah, I've seen that. I mean, I don't really follow them, but and since I've joined Instagram, and a lot of Wiggles fans have sort of connected with me, and I love them all. I love all of you. Um, yeah, I've seen that. I've seen that they've extended their member.
Mm. Yeah, I
That's a
just
great.
saw them recently. They came here to Halifax on their Canadian tour, and
Okay.
they're so. I mean, having grown up with the OG Wiggles, like I saw the OGs with Sam when I was very, very young.
Oh, lovely, lovely man.
Yeah, and I was
Yeah,
old enough to kind of understand a lot of the songs that they were doing at that time because I was around their age
yeah,
group. Um,
yes.
but with the new ones, don't get me wrong, the new ones are extremely talented, but I just thought, I feel like they're more for the kids than they were when I was a kid because I was old, I was their target audience. But
You mean like for you, it was more like back in the day when they started, it was more geared towards early childhood rather than teenagers or something. Is that what you're saying?
yeah, and then
Uh,
when I saw the current lineup here, it was oh my God, it's so interactive, and I got
exactly.
to
So.
meet
Yeah.
them afterwards, which was pretty
Mm,
cool.
mm, mm, mm,
Mhm.
mm. Yeah, no, I mean, like I said, I've seen that they've got 8 members in the group, and they're franchised as well, haven't they? They're quite there's other Wiggles groups around the world. Yeah.
Yeah, there
Mm.
was Latin American and I think Taiwanese, I believe.
Yes, I think so.
Okay. So let's begin with before your time with the Wiggles, how did you become interested in music and what were some of your biggest inspirations?
Huh. Well, that's obviously going back to my childhood.
Okay.
Um, I what I remember most about it was attending a swimming carnival for the local swimming team, which was held in a hall just down the road here from where I live. And I was maybe 7 years of age, and it was awards night. And actually, if my memory serves me well, at that awards night, the Bee Gees had played, but they weren't famous then either. They were just young kids as well. But before the ceremony or the proceedings started up at this awards night, they had two pianos either side of the hall with two ladies playing like duo work, and I was fascinated by it. I couldn't stop watching them, and as a result of that, my father bought me an upright piano without even knowing if I would take to it, and I started to have lessons, and that was really the beginning of it. The composing side of things didn't really occur until I was around about 12 or 13 when I had written a composer that lived nearby here to where I live, like a wonderful Australian composer by the name of Miriam Hyde. And I wrote her a fan letter and asked if she would send me an original manuscript in her own hand. And she did that, much to my surprise, because I didn't know from a bar when I was just a little kid, you know. And she copied out one of her pieces of music for me in her own hand and wrote a two-page letter with it and sent it to me. And that triggered something in me, because she had said in the letter that we take it for granted that music comes ready-made, that we don't stop to think that a human hand had first written it, you know. And that resonated with me, and I thought, oh, I'm going to try and write music. And I didn't know how to write music, and I sprawled myself out on the lounge room floor and ruled up pages of manuscript and designed covers for pieces of music that I'd hoped I would write one day without even knowing how to write music. And that's how I started to do it. And then I did write my first piece, which I don't think was terribly good, like my first attempts at writing something, and I sent it to her. And I guess what you'd consider my formal education really began with her in composing music. And it wasn't that I had lessons with her as such. She was more of a mentor. I would just send her everything I would do, and she'd write back to me thoughts about it and where I can make changes and improve on things. And she became my mentor for 30 years. So that's how I started to write music. And I learned as I went along. You know, I mean, as you do. The best way to learn how to do something is to start doing it, I think. And yeah, so that's how I first sort of got into music.
Great.
And that's all I know, really. I mean, I don't seem to be able to do much else. I can write words and I can write music. Beyond that, I'm a bit of a dunderhead, I think. But you know, that's how I got into music. Yes.
Mm-hmm. So eventually you wrote your first original piece, and I'd read on your site that eventually you got one of your first pieces published finally.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, it was a piece called Daybreak. It was my first serious attempt at writing a piece of music.
Okay.
And I wrote it when I was 14 years of age.
Okay. I thought it was Summer Dance, which was later used
No,
on the
Summer Dance was also written at 14 years of age.
right.
But in Summer Dance, of course, was turned into Archie's theme at Anthony Field's request and put on the debut album. Then Archie came about as a nickname for me because of my involvement with Liberace and his family. So Anthony nicknamed me Archie. That's how that came about. But the first piece was actually Daybreak, and that was published. It was published by J. Albert and Sons when I was 14, and the editor there was a gentleman by the name of Franz Holted, and he then took me under wing and trained me. He more or less trained me as far as playing the piano goes. He didn't teach me much about composition, but it all went hand in hand, you know, because through learning to play pieces, you also learn how to write as well.
Great.
Yes, yeah. So that's how that all happened.
Mm-hmm. And you were talking about your involvement with Liberace. Like, was he a big influence in you?
Enormous,
Okay.
enormous influence. I only met him once as a child.
Okay.
Um, he was like as a child, for me, he would be what you would probably call a superhero. Um, and he would appear here on Australian television every morning at 11 a.m. playing a selection of music, and I was fascinated by him. And I don't think there was anything he could not do at the piano. I mean, he may have sacrificed nuance for showmanship throughout his career, but he had an extraordinary musical mind. And when I was probably 13 or 14 again, he was touring Australia. It was 1971. He was touring Australia in March of that year, I think. Sure. And it was the first time he'd been to Australia in many years, and it was big news. It was the coverage he got in the press, like for about a month before he arrived, there was something on the front page about him all the time, and like counting down to his arrival here in Sydney. And he played at the Capitol Theatre, which is a beautiful theatre at Haymarket here in Sydney. And my mother took me to the concert, and it was an extraordinary experience. There was a classical pianist there who actually reviewed the concert, and she wrote a review called A Genius and a Jester, which sums him up pretty well, because he was really a musical genius, and he was also a jester. You know, he poked fun at himself as well as playing the piano beautifully. And I joined the fan club as a child for $1. It was $1 a year, and received bulletins and Christmas cards and things like that from him. And then
okay, that's cool. That is so cool.
Oh, I mean, the Christmas cards were incredible. Like, they were the first Christmas card I got was actually a small photo album of him.
Oh wow!
You know, and you got that all for just $1, which I suppose back in those days was comparable to whatever it costs to join a fan club nowadays. But and over the years, I kept on, receiving bulletins and everything. My studies in classical music seemed to take over, and I didn't necessarily lose interest in him, but I'd been to see him. We went again in 1973 to see him at the Hordy Pavilion. We had front row seats, so I was like 2 years older at that stage, and that was amazing as well. But at the concert in the Capitol Theatre in 1971, there I sat, just a child, and there was a moment in that concert where my mother actually said to me later that she thought I'd gone into a trance. There was a woman in the audience who actually got up and walked down and stood at the foot of the stage while he performed, and she looked like she was in a trance. But I had the strongest feeling anybody could possibly have as a child, sitting there watching him play the piano, that somehow, in some way, my life was going to become connected to his. And it happened. It happened 25, 30 years later, whatever. But as I said, I only met him once as a child, very briefly.
Right.
But I got to know his entourage. I got to know his sister. I got to know his housekeeper, who was like a second mother to me. I got to know his manager, anybody who had anything to do with Liberace. I got to know, and I got to stay in his home in Palm Springs. Whenever I would go to America to play at celebrations honoring him in Las Vegas, I would then go to Palm Springs, and I'd be invited by his family and friends to stay in his mansion there, which was called the Cloisters. So that's what I would do, and I did that from 1989 through to 1994 was the last time I'd gone. So yes, it's he was an enormous influence. I think where he wasn't necessarily my reason for taking up the piano, because it was my interest in those two ladies at the awards night that first got me interested in playing. He certainly sustained it, and he was someone that I really admired and respected. So yes, Liberace, and that's how I got the nickname Archie from Anthony Field. He would always call me Archie. I don't know why he wanted me to change the name of Summer Dance to Archie's Theme, but I even recorded an album for Anthony after just before the debut album came out. I think it was recorded in June of 1991, and it was something that Anthony wanted me to do, of show tunes, music from aspects of love and Irish music, because Anthony loved Irish music. And we recorded this album, which has never seen the light of day.
Oh.
And Greg Page sang on it. And Anthony wanted to call that Archie's album or something, which I thought was a little bit strange, but it never saw the light of day, thank heavens. It's not something that I really want to be associated with. But yes.
Well, for any of the listeners who want to hear the first ever Wiggles album, as Philip said, this thing, Archie's Theme, it was his original piece, Summer Dance, and it was called Archie's Theme because he was nicknamed among that group Archie. And if you want to hear the whole first record in full, I'll put a card in the corner of the video and you guys can listen to it. And it has a lot of the well, maybe not exactly a lot, but some Wiggles recognizable hits like "Get Ready to Wiggle's" on there. The introduction of Dorothy the Dinosaur is on there, and of course one of the Wiggles' big hits, "Rockabye Your Bear."
Yes, yes. Greg wrote Rockabye Your Bear.
Hmm.
And I did the arpeggio theme at the beginning that you hear the da 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 da. You know,
Yeah, that was
yeah.
you.
Anthony had an idea for that, and he sort of expressed to me how he would like to go, and I came up with that, and then that's me playing it right throughout Rockabye Your Bear. But my memory of that song is it's Greg's. You know, I associate it with Greg. Greg wrote it, and it's a stroke of genius. It's a wonderful song. You know.
Absolutely. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, like when I've seen the Wiggles, usually they start with that one.
Yeah, oh, do they? Okay. And what Dorothy the Dinosaur was a cockroach song called Another Saturday Night.
And the
Mm.
Cockroaches, for anybody who doesn't know, it was a rock band that Anthony and Jeff from the Wiggles were in, and it was kind of like the Rolling Stones a little bit, but one of their songs, Another Saturday Night, became the introduction for the Wiggles' most famous mascot, Dorothy the Dinosaur.
Yes, Dorothy the Dinosaur. Yeah,
Hmm.
yes. I never actually got to meet Dorothy. I mean, she wasn't birthed until after I left. I think I mean, I saw her at the Darling Harbour film.
Hmm.
That was the first time I'd actually seen the character of Dorothy in real life. Yeah.
Hmm.
And that was Paul. That was Paul Field
Oh, it
playing
was in
Dorothy.
the music video.
Yeah, yes, it's Paul Field. Yes.
Cool.
Yeah, and Murray's wife Meg made the costume.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, yeah.
So, was children's music always something that you wanted to try out?
It's not a. It's really not a choice. It's not a question of trying it out. It's always there. I don't
Okay.
believe that you can be a musician and not embrace children's music,
Okay.
especially if you're a classically trained musician. Um, and all musicians, anyway, at some stage are children studying music. So it's natural that you embrace childhood music. And where it has been said that I was not interested in children's music, that I wanted to pursue a career in classical music, I had the career in classical music anyway. And children's music is always an interest to me. I show a very keen interest in it. And I've written children's pieces for the piano. So um, I don't believe you can be an effective musician without embracing children's music, because it's to embrace your roots, your education, and everything like that. Um, and as a classical musician, you study pieces of music that Mozart wrote when he was 5, so it's all there. Um, so yeah, where it has been said that I left the Wiggles, which I didn't actually do, but where I left the Wiggles because I wasn't interested in children's music, I don't know who said that, but that's not correct. Um, and I've actually recently recorded a CD. Jen O'Carrigan is a wonderful pianist and records all my piano music. She recorded 2 sets of children's pieces to CD, and I'm chuffed that they're out there. And I have to say that writing children's music, and I'm not talking about writing children's music just for entertainment purposes, but to write children's music that is developmentally appropriate for a child, that teaches the child um, the ins and outs of those components that come together to make music, like dynamics, rhythm, melody. Um, to write a piece of music that is simple enough, that explores those categories um, for a child, even for a child to play, it's actually harder than writing a difficult piece of music.
Hmm.
Um, you have to simplify things, and that's not always easy.
Hmm.
It's probably one of the most difficult things you can do creatively,
Hmm.
um, especially writing music, because you naturally have this instinct that you want to overwrite or you want to show off. And the thing about it is, when you're writing children's music, it's not to impress, it's to impart.
Hmm.
And less reveals more. So I have found that writing children's music is actually a challenge for me. And it's one that when I do it, I embrace it wholeheartedly because it helps me to develop even further. So yeah, I am keenly interested in children's music, and I always have been.
That's great.
Yeah,
So, talking about being interested in children's music and, studying that stuff when you're children,
yeah.
how did you get involved with the Wiggles? How did it all happen?
Well, that happened. I only got involved with the Wiggles because Anthony Field asked me to be involved with it.
Okay.
That's the simple answer. I was actually the first person that he asked me to be involved in it. How it all came about. I was looking for a part-time job that would allow me to focus more on my creativity, more on writing music and whatever. And a friend here that I'd studied piano with, who was a graduate of the Liszt Academy in Hungary, she had another friend here who was also a graduate of the same academy that was lecturing in early childhood at, well, I was going to say at Macquarie University, but it wasn't Macquarie University then. And her name, that lecturer's name was Rosemary Hall. And Rosemary had some serious health concerns.
Oh.
And yes, I'm not even sure if she's still with us. God willing she is, I don't know. But my friend who had studied with her told me that Rosemary was looking for an assistant. And the position of assistant in early childhood music of Rosemary's assistant was advertised solely because she needed someone to help hold up the program when she wasn't well enough.
Mm-hmm.
And I got that job. And it was a 17-hour-a-week job. And where it's also been said in the press that I was a teacher at Macquarie University, I was not. I was not a lecturer. I assisted Rosemary in the program. I helped her to prepare her lessons. I knew what materials she'd use, and I would help her prepare them. And when she was off ill, I'd just give her the work out to the students, and they'd do it. So I more or less helped hold up the program. And it was there that I met Anthony Field. Or perhaps he met me. He seemed to search me out. And I met Murray and Greg, and they were in different years though. When I met Anthony and Murray, they were in third year and Greg was in first year. And Anthony just kind of befriended me, and we played music together. And then around about November of, 1990, I think he asked me, would I be interested in doing an album of children's music. And most of the album was going to be based on music that they had been taught by Rosemary Hall. A lot of the material on the debut album is out of her portfolio of material that she taught the students.
Oh, wow. So
yeah,
are you talking about like traditional children's songs? Because there were a lot of those on that album.
Yes, exactly. Like well, obviously things like Lavender Blue, but Suagan and O Eva Tai Tai, all those, they're from Rosemary's teaching source. And I think she should have been credited for that. I don't think she's been mentioned much. But that's and yes, Anthony asked me around about November of 1990, would I be interested? And I said yes, of course I would. Why wouldn't I? And I believe from Greg's autobiography, Now and Then of 2011, I think he then asked Greg, because Greg says in that book that Anthony asked him would he be interested in being involved in it in December of 1990. Well, I know that Anthony asked me in November because my contract at university finished in November, and he asked me before I left for that year. Mm-hmm. And it all came about through that, and we put some things together. I wrote a lot of the arrangements, and I did some of the solo things myself. As you mentioned in the introduction, I think it only says on the debut album that I'm credited with piano, but most of the arrangements for all the traditional material are mine, and I play them on the recording because I play them on the keyboard with simulated sounds.
So in Get Ready to Wiggle and Rockabye Your Bear, the sound effect of the trumpet, that was simulated?
In Rockabye Your Bear, yes, that was played on a keyboard. I played that on a keyboard. It's just an arpeggio figure, and it was recurred throughout. Yes, and that's how it started. And we sort of went, I think, from there to, we first tried to record what we had done. We tried to record the debut album here at my home in the music room. But it didn't work out. And then we went from here to trying to record it in the auditorium at the Institute of Early Childhood, where they're all studying, where I was working. And the auditorium had a grand piano. But again, it didn't quite work. We needed a proper studio. And we found Tracking Station in the city, in the CBD, which had a grand piano as well, which was probably one of the reasons why we chose that. And we went there to record it, and that's where the debut album was recorded in its entirety. But it was found that the microphones that we were using were picking up the sounds of the felts leaving the strings on the piano, so you'd get this swooshing sound, on the recording. So we couldn't use the piano, which presented a problem. So at the 11th hour, Steve Pomfret, who was the sound engineer, and he was an extraordinary fine sound engineer. I worked with him later myself for a project I was doing. He was an absolute godsend. He phoned what I believe my memory is that he phoned a keyboard player who had worked with Johnny Farnham to see if we could get his keyboard. And that keyboard was brought in at the 11th hour, like in a moment of panic. It was there within 19 minutes or something. We had this keyboard to work with, and it was a magnificent keyboard. I felt completely comfortable playing it because it had weighted keys, and it had all the simulated sounds and whatever. And yeah, so the album was recorded at tracking stations with that keyboard. I think I sat on a telephone book actually to balance myself because it didn't have a proper spool. Yeah, I seem to think I did that. I know I've sat on a telephone book playing the piano or playing a keyboard somewhere, but I think yes, I think we did. And months later, like even after my time with the Wiggles came to an end. I don't know whether to say left or departed or whatever, but after my time with the Wiggles came to an end, I had a project that I wanted to do myself. And I phoned Steve, the sound engineer at Tracking Station, to see if I could book time there to play and to record it, and would he be the sound engineer. And he agreed to it, and he got that keyboard back for me to play.
Oh, that's
And
great.
yeah, it was. And I did this whole sort of album of my own stuff and whatever, but it was just for what I used to do back in those days. I used to play for wedding receptions. So I recorded this album, and I would give it to the bride and groom as a gift afterwards. It wasn't a commercial thing, but so I loved playing that keyboard. It was actually a really, really fine instrument to play, and I loved working with Steve Pomfret because he was so professional and so intuitive as well. And I think really, he could have been credited producer for the debut album of the Wiggles because his input creatively, as far as nuance and everything goes, he was really wonderful. I mean, suggestions that he would make and everything. He was kind of like the icing on the cake, really. So I have a lot of respect for Steve Pomfret. I touched base with him not so long ago, after about 30 years, on Instagram. Yeah, because he sort of remembered me, which was nice. So yeah,
Nice.
yeah.
By any chance, did you happen to see the new Wiggles documentary that's on Amazon Prime now?
I knew you were going to ask me that. I knew it. Yes, I have only seen up to the part where Sam was interviewed. Sam
Okay.
Ryan. I know Fraser. I know Fraser Grew, who was part of the team that made the documentary.
Mm-hmm.
And I love Fraser. Fraser's a wonderful person. And he has this fantastic Instagram page called 10,000 Dreams, where he interviews people about what their dreams are.
Mm-hmm.
And I've sort of connected with him through there. And he asked me, would I release some photographs and whatever for the documentary? And I said, yes, I would, of course. And he's a good chap. I have a lot of time for Fraser. But yes, I have seen it, but as I said, only up to where Sam was interviewed. I guess really because I only wanted to see how I would have been covered, and then about Sam's input as well. Yes, it's a fantastically made documentary.
It really is, yeah.
Yes. I don't
like,
know. I mean, I don't know if it's entirely transparent. I don't think it is transparent. But it's beautifully made.
yeah, like
Very
I
beautifully
saw it
made.
like day one when it came out, and it was just a couple of weeks after I had met the current Wiggles, and and a couple of parents were there, like they see me with the Wiggles. One parent was like, how did you do that? And I'm like, I just saw them and I said hello, and they were like, okay, well, what if I wanted a picture of them with my kid? I'm like, just ask them. I'm sure they'll probably
Yeah,
say yes.
yes.
And, thinking about that, I remember one of the parents was saying, "Thank you for everything that you do. You do wonderful things for kids." And as I was watching the documentary, I thought, man, these guys really do, amazing stuff for the kids. And with the Christmas album that they just put out, like I still follow them on Instagram. They just put out a Christmas
Yes,
record. And I thought, wow, they
yeah,
really do know how to make these kids happy.
yeah. It's yeah, you don't have to do much to make a child happy. I mean, sometimes it just takes a smile, you know.
That's
And
true. Yeah. Laughter's the best medicine.
yeah, and children are always smiling as well. They're always. I always find that like I find children sort of stare at me and smile, which is really lovely. But I think um, yeah, I haven't seen the entire documentary.
Okay.
But it was interesting to see the photographs, like the kind of montage thing that was done about my time with them, because there was only one photograph that I didn't remember that was taken. I have no recollection of it being taken at all, and it's the one where there's we're sitting in Anthony's old apartment at Stanmore. He used to live in the Sydney suburb of Stanmore, and I'm sitting on the floor, and we're all holding up a vinyl album. I don't even remember what album I'm holding up, but I think I'm sitting on the floor, and um, I have no recollection of that photo being taken at all. Kind of strange because it's a posed photo. It's something that we obviously posed for, and I don't know who took it either. But the other photos I remembered.
Okay. Well, when I met them, just going back to what I was saying about these guys know how to make kids happy.
Mm.
I don't know if you know Katarina, who is one of their background dancers for the Wiggles.
She's a Red Wiggle now.
She's one of the Red Wiggles. Yeah, she and
Yes,
Simon.
I
And
know of her. I know of
yeah,
her.
and I remember seeing her. Like I met Simon and Paul Paddock first that night, and then right after I see Anthony and his daughter Lucia, and Katarina's
Mm.
right there with everybody. And I was just awestruck. Like I barely ever get starstruck, but in this moment I was like, holy shoot. And yeah, I got pictures with them, and after I got a photo with
That's-
Katarina and Sahai, who's in that photo as well.
yeah,
I said
I was gonna say that's kind of like it's a bit of a, I don't know if you call it a phenomenon, but I'm going to use that word anyway. It's like a strange phenomenon for me because sometimes fans will contact me, and they'll say, "What was it like working with the Wiggles?" You know, and there's no wow factor there for me at all.
mhm.
Because when I was involved with them, the Wiggles weren't the Wiggles. We were trying to do something for early childhood that hadn't taken off. So my memory of them is just as they were at university, and as I was there as the music assistant. There's it's not, oh my God, it's I work with the Wiggles. That's it just wasn't like that. It was a totally different dynamic. And I
Right.
don't think I'm not a person that's starstruck anyway. Anyway, um,
Yeah, same. Like I went to HalCon, which is our fan convention, and they had Chad Michael Murray there, who's a really famous actor, and everyone's
oh
like,
yeah,
"Oh,
yeah,
I'm so
yeah,
nervous to talk to Chad Michael Murray." I'm like, "Just say
yeah.
hello. It's not that hard."
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I've never. I mean, I don't adulate people. I don't. I mean, I've had like with Liberace, of course. I mean, he was my childhood hero, and I have to say that I mean, I think since my time over there with Liberace's family, my time in the States, in Palm Springs and Las Vegas with his family and friends, um, I probably got to know more about Liberace than most people would know.
Oh
And
wow.
he was a wonderfully kind man, and he was a very humble person. He wasn't the person you see on stage
Hmm.
in his shows. He was
So he
very
so he was
retiring.
just like the kind of guy who would
Yes,
treat you like one
yes,
of the locals.
yes. And I remember I'd been shown uh, videos of Christmas parties and gatherings at his home. He would
Oh.
serve the guests. He would walk around and serve the guests. Not only that, in Palm Springs, across from his home in Palm Springs was uh, a church where he would attend. He'd go to mass there whenever he was in Palm Springs. And it was just opposite his home there, opposite his mansion. And I would go there and attend mass with Father Vince, who was a friend of mine and a friend of Liberace's.
Hmm.
And Father Vince was a wonderfully holy man. And every Friday, the church would open its doors to the less privileged people in the area, people who were in need of a meal, things like that.
Hmm.
And I'd go there with Father Vince, and we'd serve meals to the underprivileged people. And I was told by the minister there that when Liberace was in residence, every Friday he would not only cook meals for the underprivileged people there at the church, he would serve them.
Oh,
So
that's
he was
sweet.
an extraordinarily kind man. And I think that my time there, in getting to know his family and friends as I did, and learning about the private man that he was, like um, I don't see him as a showman anymore. Even when I watch videos of him on YouTube, I don't see him as this mega star who was a legend or anything. I just see him as a wonderfully humble man who was
Same.
giving
I mean,
love
I've
to the
never
world
had any
through what he did.
experience with Liberace, but I know what you mean.
Yes, yes. And it's just that they're giving love to the world through what they do, you
Yeah.
know. Um, so I don't sort of, like I said, I'm not really starstruck by anybody. I don't think
Yeah.
I'd go, oh wow. Although I did, yeah, when I saw Queen Elizabeth here in Sydney, not far from where I live actually,
Oh, that's cool.
that was cool. I don't jump up and hit the air, but I jumped up and I hit the air. Um,
Nothing wrong with that.
it was an extraordinary experience because there was only myself and my father, the three of us and two other people on the side of the road waiting for her to go past in a motorcade. And she
Hmm.
waved at us. She waved at just the five of us. Had there been a huge crowd, it wouldn't have meant anything. But she turned around and waved at us, and it was like, oh my God, she's seen, So, yeah, that was a wow factor. That was a wow factor. But other than that, no, I'm not interested in people who try to impress. If you try
Hmm.
to impart something to someone and you try to do that through love and generosity of spirit, that gets me. That will win me over.
Hmm.
Um, yeah. So,
Well, when I was meeting the Wiggles, like as I said, I met Katarina, and like Katarina, she was there when I was a kid. Like, and I said to her, Katarina, I want
yeah.
you to know, I remember you. I've wanted to meet you since I was 5 years old. Like, I remember when you were a
Yeah.
pirate, a background dancer, a Christmas elf, a reindeer, a bird, a witch. Like, I've wanted to meet you for a very, very long time. She just went, "Aw," and I'm like, "Yeah, can I give you a hug?"
Yeah.
And she
Yeah.
said yes, and she gave me a hug, and Anthony's daughter Lucia gave me a hug right after.
Yes. How long has she been a Red Wiggle? Like
Oh,
she moved up
well, she
then.
was there. Well, she was there as a Red Wiggle last year when I saw them, so I'd
Mm,
probably say maybe about a year now.
okay.
Hmm.
Mm.
You're talking about Katarina or Lucia?
Yes. Yes, Katerina.
Okay, yeah,
How long has she
she's
been?
been there. Both of them have been there for about a year.
Yeah, but Katerina's only recently come up into actually taking on the role of the Red Wiggle, hasn't she?
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So I don't know any of it. I've only gotten to know a little bit more about them since I joined Instagram.
Hmm.
All the Wiggles fans started sort of messaging me and everything. And, they send me clips now and then or whatever.
Yeah.
Yes, because I haven't followed them. I mean, after 1992, I never followed them at all. I didn't really do.
So you did a little bit of songwriting
So.
for the Wiggles' first album,
I did a
including
lot. I
yeah,
did a lot. Yes,
yeah.
I have to say, I was a little bit surprised by how Murray, in the documentary, Murray Cook's recollection of me. I found it to be a little bit dismissive, because I think he referred to me as a guy they met at university who wrote some piano pieces or something. And that threw me back a bit because Murray and I were friends. I remember once having heavy discussion about the French author Flaubert because Murray was reading Sentimental Education, and we were friends, and I wrote I wrote the majority of the debut album actually, and yeah, I think Murray might need a bit of a reality check there with that because I was something more than just a guy that they met at university who wrote some piano pieces. I was a little bit shocked that he referred to me that way. Because he knows better. But
Mm.
it's all by and by. But yeah, that kind of was a surprise to me in the documentary. Greg, on the other hand, God bless him. Um, Greg, when he wrote his autobiography in 2011, he more or less devoted an entire chapter to me, and I think it's called A Weekly Genesis or something. And he acknowledged me like it was really beautiful. the way he acknowledged me. And I actually contacted him after that. I think he had to perhaps be a little bit guarded with what he wrote. I don't know, because some things were uncertain. But I was really touched that he acknowledged me the way he did. He even said that I was a musical genius, which I'm not. But that was a lovely, lovely thing to do. And so I emailed him in 2011 after I'd seen what he'd written about me, and which was the first time I'd had anything to do with him since 1991. So what's that, 20 years later or something, I guess. Is it?
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I thanked him profusely for his generosity of spirit. And he replied. He replied
Wow.
and he said, yeah, he said that he was glad that I liked what he'd written and that my contributions to the debut album shouldn't be forgotten. And that touched
Absolutely.
me. Well, that touched me as well. I've not had any dealings with him since. So it's like, and that's the only time I've had any contact with a Wiggle, I think, in 30 years. But yeah, I will forever be grateful to Greg for having acknowledged me the way he did.
Yeah, I mean, even though you were on just that, and I don't say this to throw any shade, but just that one album and one album only. I mean,
Mm,
that one
yeah.
album, like if you think about the familiarity of the name, The Wiggles, like,
Mm,
and if you go
mm,
back and if you go back and listen to that first album, like that just kicks off a whole
mm. It's
a whole thing. Yeah.
it sold over 100,000 copies.
Oh, wow.
When it was phased out, it had reached over 100,000 copies. It went platinum, which I think platinum was 70,000 copies. So it had sold over 100,000 copies. I don't know if there's such a thing as double platinum, but it was probably on its way to getting another award when it was phased out. So yeah, I think it's I actually when COVID was really rampant here in Australia and whatever, a couple of years back, I wrote Anthony 3 times with the idea that he might perhaps re-release the debut album as a global fundraiser for COVID and give everything from it to COVID relief, meaning that like as a global fundraiser, however many copies sold in Canada, the monies from that went to Canada for COVID, and in England, the money would go to England or Spain or whatever, Australia. So my idea was that as a global fundraiser, whatever monies it made in whatever country, those monies went back to that country for COVID research.
Mm-hmm.
And I wrote him 3 times, but he never replied. So. But I think it was a good idea at the time.
Yeah.
And I didn't want anything for it, but I think it would have been an iconic kind of thing to do, to re-release the debut album as a global fundraiser for COVID relief.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, no, it's I don't have a copy of it actually. I only
Same.
ever had one copy. Yeah, well, I only ever had one copy of it, and I don't know. I probably gave that away. But I've got the awards, but I don't have one. And
That's good.
I've only started listening to it again in the last year or so, I suppose, and I did that via YouTube. So because it's
Mm-hmm.
there on YouTube. Yeah, and that which I think you probably know because I've mentioned it elsewhere. The actual debut album that was released by the ABC is the demo tape that we submitted to them for consideration. It was not re-recorded again or anything. It's the actual demo tape.
Oh,
Yes, yes.
I don't think I did know that. Wow.
Oh, well, there you go. You know now. The debut
Yeah.
album is the debut album is the demo tape as we sent it to the ABC for consideration. That's it. And it was originally going to be yellow, the cover. It wasn't going to be orange.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you wrote the song "Mischief the Monkey" for that album, which
Yeah, yeah,
which
yeah,
you and I have discussed quite a few times. Can you
yeah.
talk a little bit about that?
Mischief's a fun little fellow. He's hmm, yeah, he's been writing his memoir for the past 30 years, but he can't get past page 1. No, it's he's my little fellow. If you can have a monkey for a son. Yeah, well, what happened? It came about very quickly. Because we were Murray, Greg, myself, and Anthony were in the music room, finalizing the track listings and whatever for the debut album before we were recording it. That's the music room at the Institute of Early Childhood.
Mhm.
And Anthony just said, Arch, we need another we need another track. So I got a bit of
It's
paper.
so confusing knowing that he called you Arch and I know you as
Oh
Philip.
no, yeah. Anyway, okay. So he said, he sort of blurted out at me that we needed another song. So I sat down on the floor and got a huge piece of paper out, and I wrote "Mischief the Monkey," and I wrote it in probably under. I know I wrote it in under 10 minutes. It was very quick. But it's formula thing. I think it's probably one of the most developmentally appropriate things on the debut album.
Mm-hmm.
And like it was just the glockenspiel, dum da dum dum da dum, and then I had the words. The words came first. I just wrote the words and then put that, and it was done in a matter of minutes.
That's amazing.
It's I have a I gotta tell you, I have a friend. I've never met him, but he's one of my best friends. I met him online at YouTube, coincidentally after he'd watched a movie about Liberace. He wanted to know if how much of it was true, so we connected that way. And his name is John, and we've been friends now for probably 10 years. He's actually he's very intuitive when it comes to music. He's very intelligent, and he has a late night radio show in Spokane.
Oh, cool.
Yes, and he plays like grunge music and heavy metal music, like from about midnight through to 3 a.m. in the morning or something like that. Some ungodly time like that. And
So like rock music, like the kind of rock music
yeah,
I'm into, like,
heavy,
my favorite,
heavy,
Simple Plan.
heavy. Yeah, I know you're into heavy kind of stuff, and alternative things. And one night he played Mischief the Monkey on his program, which was kind of cute. Yeah, because I imagined then all these sort of headbangers sitting there listening to all this heavy metal stuff, and then all of a sudden, jump, jump, Mischief the Monkey comes on, you know. But Mischief the Monkey is a bit of an earworm for him. It gets into his ear, and we can't. But he's a character. He's taken on the whole persona of his own, I think. Because do you know Will Wagner? Do you know Will Wagner?
Do I? I don't. I'm not sure.
He was doing his sort of stint at early childhood music, and he asked me in the 30th anniversary year of the debut album. He asked me, would I write a sequel type song for Mischief the Monkey? So I did, and I wrote him and Tyler Armstrong, who's they're fantastic people. I wrote them both a second like lyric about Mischief the Monkey, and they wrote their own music for it, and they did it really wonderfully well. It turned out well, but I don't know if it's online now. But yeah, Mischief's quite a thing with me. Yeah, he's
But that's a hilarious song to play on rock radio. I can hear,
yeah,
and you just
yeah.
heard the Rolling Stones, and coming up next, we got Simple Plan,
Mischief the
All
Monkey,
Time Low, and Mischief the Monkey.
Mischief the Monkey.
That would not
Yeah,
be an all-time low.
yeah. But he's and actually Mischief was going to be the first mascot before Dorothy came along. Did you know?
Uh-huh.
And I'm not sure, I could be wrong on this, but I think in Greg's book, in his autobiography, he makes mention of that Mischief might have been the first mascot in the very early concerts. But I remember it was either one Saturday or one Sunday morning going to Sydney University, which is a different university to where Anthony, everybody said, of going to Sydney University with Anthony to think up a film clip for Mischief the Monkey. Because Mischief was going to be the big mascot, before Dorothy came along. And we'd worked out that we would have like Mischief in a jungle, and leaves would fall from trees, and as the leaves fell from the tree, they would turn into musical notes, and melodies would happen and things like that. But it never took off. I actually wanted to have a real monkey in the band, in the group. I thought that would have been really cool to have a real monkey.
I'd be way too nervous.
Yeah, a little bit advantageous in my thinking there, I think. But advantageous, is that the word? I'm not sure. But yeah, Mischief is. I know amongst the Wiggles community, I have like Jake Deffenbaugh. He's always asking me how Mischief is, and so he's got this whole little furry life living going on there. So yeah, Mischief's real.
Mm-hmm. So I'm actually glad that you brought up little film clips with the Wiggles' first album, because I'd love to ask you about the.
Mm. Yeah, okay, okay. I know what you're going to ask.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about the Get Ready to Wiggle music video where you were
Hmm.
doing the trumpet, and of course you're more of
Yeah,
a
no,
classical piano guy. How is
yeah.
that established?
I wasn't playing it. I was only pretending to.
Right.
Awkward as well, like totally different position from what I
Oh,
used to with the
okay.
piano. You
So
know,
sorry if I put you in an awkward position then.
no, no, not at all, not at all. I don't know if I looked terribly convincing pretending to play it anyway, but yeah. So that's that. And I don't think I could be wrong on this, and I'll stand corrected. I don't think Jeff is actually playing the keyboard for real in that film clip. I think he was only miming because um, he had the keyboard part for Get Ready to Wheel already programmed into his keyboard, you know. And I think he was
Right.
just miming it. It wasn't him doing it live.
Yeah.
I may be wrong with that, but yeah, most certainly I wasn't playing. I wasn't playing the trumpet,
Mm.
and I haven't tried to since. So
Well,
and
it's
I'm good at
funny.
blowing my own trumpet, as the expression goes. Yeah.
Mm. Well, I actually worked on a music video once, and I
Mm.
remember they had it was the band that we were working with, like they brought their actual instruments, but likewise
Yeah.
they were miming it,
Miming. Yeah.
and I remember they had an actor who was like listening to one of the members of the band kind of like shout the lyrics at her,
Oh,
and
okay. Yeah.
all the other band members were off to the side of the set literally screaming the lyrics as they were playing it so that the other guy could lip sync, but everyone was just
Oh,
yelling the
I see.
lyrics.
Yeah. 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 I I I I I don't think it'd be an easy thing to do. I mean, I don't know how, if given that I think Jeff did really mime playing the keyboard in that film, I don't know. I don't know if I'd be able to pull it off. I don't know if I'd be able to look like I was actually playing a piano when I wasn't. Um, I think I'd have to physically really be playing it. You
Mm-hmm.
know, I mean, you are, but I don't think
Yeah, like,
I
yeah, I
think,
mean, like you know how, so you can like
yes,
yeah, you can
yes,
mimic it.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yes, so that was the first ever film clip I'd ever been in. That was different. Yeah, that took about a whole day to actually record that. It took
Yeah,
hours.
most music
Hours.
videos usually do take a whole day.
Yeah, yeah, it's quite a production.
It really is, yeah. For just a short little thing, it is quite the production, yeah.
Yes, yes.
And you also did a few live performances with the Wiggles, is that correct? Like when they started out?
Not oh, not that many.
Okay.
There were a couple. There was one that was done. I can tell you the exact date. Actually, it was done on
Oh, okay.
August 6th. Yeah, on August 16th, 1991, at a preschool in Randwick.
Which was a
It was a.
Friday.
Was it?
I've been able to do that for years.
Are you one of those people? Oh my lord!
It's
How did
so
you do
fun.
that?
It's so funny because like in my first few days of college, one of my classmates said to me, "James, did you come here right out of high school?" And I said, "No, I did not. I took a gap year." And one of my friends looks at me and is like, "So you're 19?" I said, "Yes, I am 19." He's like, "Cool. When did you turn 19?" And I was like, my birthday's in March. Actually, my birthday is the day before yours.
That's right. It is too.
Yes.
Yes.
And but yeah, I
You're
said to
the
the guy, my birthday's in March, and he's like, "Oh, cool. My birthday's in November." And I was like, "Oh, well, it's September. It's September now. What's the day of your birthday? Maybe as a class we'll do something we'll celebrate." He said the 24th. I'm like, "Damn it, that's a Saturday." And he just looked at everyone and then comes right back to me and is like, "How do you know that?" But I don't. The
well,
honest answer is I don't know how I know that.
but well, what's the sensation that you're feeling when you suddenly have that realization? I mean, what is it?
The way I think of it is that the calendar repeats itself every 28 years. I don't know how I ended up figuring that out, but I just kind of think
Hmm.
back to a year that I was paying attention to the actual dates of, because like on my assignments in school, I'd write it's Friday, March 7th, 2014. So that's one way that I kind of remember it. And somehow I
Hmm.
figured out that the calendar repeats itself every 28 years. So I was like, okay, what was it like on this date? So yeah,
It's
that's one way to
fascinating
explain.
that you have that instant recall to do it. You know, that's
Thank you.
amazing. But yes, so it was August the 16th, and it was at a preschool in Randwick, and
Mm-hmm.
that was the first time that we were doing a photo shoot for a magazine, and the magazine was called Women's Day,
Mm-hmm.
which was a big magazine. I don't know if it's still around now, but Women's Day magazine. And we did the concert for the kiddies in the preschool, and then we did the photo shoot for the magazine, and that was was one of the concerts I was involved in, and then after that, the other one, I was a replacement for one of the guys who couldn't show up, and I can't remember who it was now, and that was in another preschool. So there were only, from memory, I think I was only ever in 2 performances, and then there was the Dorothy the Dinosaur film clip much later.
Okay.
So I would say probably no more than 3 times I performed with them. Yeah, but the first one on the 16th of August in 1991, that was the first, I suppose you'd say, professional. It was the first one anyway that involved a photo shoot for a magazine.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. So in your music now, is there anything like current that inspires you?
Do you mean am I inspired by people or subjects or what?
Yeah. Yeah, like I'm thinking, of course, about artists like Charlie Puth, who's a piano player in his own right, or
different genre.
Okay.
I'm less involved in writing music now.
Okay.
Seem to think I've written enough. I think there's either 12 or 13 CDs out there, all of my music, mostly other people playing it though, not me, because I won't play my own music, I don't want to. So there's at least, yes, I think there's 13 CDs out there, and there's probably 4 or 5 compilation discs that I'm on. And I've written probably 10 or 11 books as well.
Oh, nice.
But I rather love using words now, and I will treat words the same way I treated music when I was writing music. But my composing more or less came to an end. Well, it didn't come to an end, but it sort of took a back seat as I was caring for my father more and more, because I was full-time carer for my dad for 12 years. And as he became more frail and as the dementia took over, I had to give a keen ear to him. Like I had to be aware of where he was and what he was doing in the house all the time. So I couldn't really work at a piano and do that. I had to be able to listen to hear what he was doing, hear his walking frame moving around the house and everything. So I stopped writing music. I think probably I've only written 3 or 4 pieces of music in the last 3 or 4 years. And I then turned to writing books, because as I said, I treat that the same way as I write music, because at least writing a book is silent, so I could hear what my dad was doing as well. Okay. And I don't feel a need to write music now. I think I've said all I have to say as far as that goes. But words fascinate me. I'm really caught by them. I'm caught by anagrams and things like that. So I love that, and I disciplined myself as a part of praying. I think it was as a part of my prayer that would see me survive caring for my dad, because it wasn't an easy thing to do, especially 12 years. Because he was losing his identity, and I was losing my identity to him while he was losing his identity, and it was a challenge. It was very much a challenge, and I had to find some way of doing something that would preserve my inner self, so that I could have the strength to care for him. And I turned to writing words, and I would discipline myself to writing 7 thoughts every morning as soon as I woke up. 7 because it was God's number. And I would latch onto an idea or just a word, and I would milk it for all it's worth, and I would write 7 thoughts every morning. And then I would shape those thoughts the same way I would shape a piece of music. And then those thoughts turned into a book. And that's how I got into writing my books. And that became my prayer. Whereas music has always been my prayer throughout my life, and has seen me survive. I don't think I'd be here without being creative anyway. Words took over to become my prayer. And as I said, my creativity is what really gave me the strength to look after Dad the way I had to look after him, because it was 24/7 non-stop for 12 years. And it was challenging. It was very challenging. I think too, with the dementia, when the dementia really took hold of him, and there were times when he didn't know who I was. He couldn't recognize me. And I remember one time saying to him, "Do you know who I am?" And he just said, "No."
Ooh.
Yeah, I know. Where people, where family members are affected by that, in such a terribly sad way, understandably.
Yeah, like my grandmother, like she passed away a couple of years ago from Alzheimer's disease, and when she was diagnosed, like it was at its worst already.
Yeah, yes. But like, yeah, that's sad. I'm sorry for your loss there.
Thanks.
It's always difficult. But
Yeah. I'm sorry for
I
your
found,
loss too, by the way.
oh yeah, I'll probably end up crying in this interview before long. Um, I cry a lot these days, but that's a
Oh,
beautiful thing. That's beautiful. Everybody should cry. Um, no, can I do it now? No, no. Hang in there. The thing with my dad that I found was when he didn't recognize me, because I was his carer and the only one that was caring for him. When he didn't recognize me, that was when I could get him to do the things he had to do. That was when I could get him to do exercise, when I could get him to do, occupational therapy sort of thing. Whereas as a son, whenever I would ask him to do something, he wouldn't do it. I guess because he recognized me as a family member and he was my father. But when he didn't recognize me and he assumed that I was a nurse or there in some professional capacity, he did everything that I needed for him to do to make sure that his day passed well. So in a way, that there were times when he didn't recognize me, it served as a blessing in caring for him. Oh my gosh, it was challenging. I can't tell you. I think for the last 3 or 4 years of my life, I never had a good night's sleep. But and I'm still like, Dad passed away in August of, what year are we in now? 2023.
2023.
Yeah, he passed away in August of last year, of course, and which isn't all that long ago. And I've just lost my train of thought now. I don't know what I was going to say.
Oh, um,
But anyway, he died in my arms. I was holding him.
oh. I'm sorry that you went through all of this.
No, I'm not going to cry. Yeah, because the last month of his life he spent in hospital. Most of the time he was at home. And I was glad that he actually passed away at hospital. I was appreciative of that. And for the last, I think every afternoon, he would say to me around about 4 o'clock, why don't you go home and get some rest? And I would do that. And then it was a Tuesday afternoon, and I said to myself, I said, Dad, would you mind if I go home and get some rest now? And I'll see you in the morning. And he said, oh, if I'm here. And I said to him, well, where else would you be? And he said, in heaven. And I'd never heard my father say the word heaven in
Mhm.
all the years that I was his son. And I thought, okay, something's happening here. He's gonna leave soon. And I checked with the hospital, and they allowed me to stay in his room 24/7 for the last week of his life. And it was the most extraordinary experience. And he was quite literally, I was holding him in my arms when he took his last breath. And it's the greatest experience of my life. It really was. Because like I was one of those sons, we had one of those relationships we never got on, not at all. And
Mhm.
when I became his carer, we became friends.
Mhm.
And the last time in hospital, when he told me he loved me, it was something that I'd wanted to hear all my life. And it was the most amazing feeling. So, anyway, we should change subject. This is getting off, kind of, isn't it? Yeah.
Well,
But no, when
uh,
I got to say this though, when my dad told me that he loved me, it was my father speaking, but it felt like it was our Father in heaven that was saying it was coming from, extraordinary experience. And I would go through it all again. I would go through those 12 years again if I could.
mhm.
Every
It was a
Monday.
good. It was so for you, it was kind of like reconnecting.
Oh, totally, completely,
Okay.
absolutely. Yeah.
Mhm.
And I was determined that he wouldn't die alone. I didn't want to have to go to hospital one day and be told that he passed away during the night. I wanted to be there when he passed, and I did that. I did that for him. Yeah,
So going back to what you were earlier talking about with writing words, you also, in addition to
yeah.
writing the Mischief the Monkey song, you also wrote a
Mm,
lot of
mm.
spoken recording poems
That's right.
for the Wiggles.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
What was that like?
Poetry's music. Poetry's music and words.
Hmm.
Um, it's, I mean, some poetry, some of the world's greatest classic poetry is they're just pieces of music. You look at the Psalms. I'm going through the Psalms in the Bible now, which is something I've never done. I'm studying the Psalms. They're all music. It's just extraordinary things. Um, and children's poetry is another dimension. I actually produced a small book of children's poetry a couple of years ago called Flowers in Flight. And the majority of poems in that book are what I wrote for Here Comes a Song, which never happened for me. I'd written a lot of material for the second Woodward album, Here Comes a Song, and more material for that album than I wrote for the Devo album. And there was, I wrote a children's pantomime called Bebop, which
That's
was
cute.
yeah, it was designed for children in an early childhood setting to do like a little pantomime music thing too. And I sort of reworked some of them and put them in a book, and it was published a couple of years ago called Flowers in Flight. So I love children's poetry too. And again, as it is with writing children's music, writing children's poetry it's challenging. It's terribly hard to simplify things to the point where it embraces innocence, like the innocence of a child's life.
Yeah.
Because you have to enter that innocence again, and you have to leave all the baggage behind and just think pure thoughts to produce something for a child, because it has to be innocent. It has to be as they are for it to resonate with them. So writing children's poetry is not just string a few words together and that'll be it. No, there's something much more to it. And with writing children's poetry as well. At least that's my belief. That's my belief.
Well, that's all I've got here. Is there anything else you want to say to wrap up?
Oh, are we wrapping up? Okay. No, look, I don't know how this all turned out, but anyway, you've got me crying. That's one thing. Yes. No, I love crying. It's the most wonderful thing you can do. Do you know what tears are? Tears are the liquid state of love. That's why it's good to cry. And when I was terribly ill myself once in hospital, going back to 25 years, a nurse explained to me that when you cry tears of joy, they're different to tears of grief, because when you cry tears of grief, there's a sedative type thing that happens in the tear that calms you down, that serves as a balm. So by all means, anybody out there who wants to cry, just do it. It's the best thing you can do in the world. Crying and laughing. It's it. But no, I have nothing else. I don't know if you've got nothing else to ask, but I appreciate that you've invited me on. It's been really lovely to talk to you for real now, in real time.
Yes.
Because, yeah. And thank you for everything that you've shared with me over the years, all the photographs and all of your adventures and interests in life and simple plan, all that. And that's what life is, a simple plan.
Yes.
Well, it is. If you stay with the simplicity of the plan, you'll get through without a problem. Except when you start laying, complicating things and adding heaps of...
Even though I'm just a kid and life is a nightmare. Direct quote from Simple Plan.
Oh, is it? Well,
I'm just a kid and life is a nightmare. I don't know if you know that song.
Yeah.
Big hit for them.
I don't. No, I don't, but I get it. I understand that. Yes. Yeah. We should all remain children. I think probably we all are at heart. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I mean, I'm 65, and I tell people that I've turned 10 times in a bit. I've still got a child's heart. I've never let go of it.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of wisdom there to be found. There's a lot of wisdom in children because they haven't got all that. They haven't got the nightmare yet that's about to happen. So,
that nightmare is called growing up.
Yes. Well, I think it's more like growing away. We grow away from the source. But I think children have a lot to offer. We have a lot to learn from them the same way we do from our animals and our pets. So that's really fun. But no, thank you for inviting me on. I hope I've been okay in chatting with you.
Absolutely. And to all you listeners, update, there are 2 more Nostalgia Talk Christmas bonuses coming up, the Christmas retrospectives, and 1 more Nostalgia Talk before the end of the year. So that's really exciting. There's a couple of stuff coming out before the end of the year, and I'll see you with that really soon. Peace out.
God bless you.